have Andrew Booth here, fresh off Pafuri Traverse, episode 1, first ever inaugural Pafuri Traverse, and yeah, he's going to share his trip experiences with us. Tell us what it was like, Andrew, leading out on day 1 Pafuri Traverse 1.
I think we started walking at about 8:30 after a final briefing at the outpost. We left Punda Maria at 6 as early as we could. Mark and myself had to just do 2 water drops, one for later that day and the other for day 2. So we gathered there and then headed out. It was hot, and yeah, it was hard immediately. I think everyone with a heavy pack at the beginning, getting going, it's never easy. So we walked probably 2 or 3 k's before our first break. Actually, at our first break, everyone was quite chipper still, but after that it descended quite quickly into a lot of red faces. I remember looking back and seeing 2 in particular, just like bright red faces. And I guess that does worry you a little bit as a guide when you're pushing too hard. But it was hot and we had to do 15 k's day 1, so not too much you can do because it's only getting hotter, so you might as well just rest a bit and then go, rest a bit, go. And that was the tactic. We got to our water where we had dropped that. Unfortunately, actually it worked out fine, 10 liters of water. So we had wanted to drop 25, but the canister didn't have a lid on and fell over on the way there. So we lost a whole lot of water, which wet my bag and everything as well. But it wasn't such an issue because it was hot, so it dried out. But we topped up there, back to 5 liters because there was no water at lunchtime. And then picked our way to Lana Gorge using some of the roads, but mainly just through the Sandveld, Mapani, all the way to Lana View, famous site. Most people have been there or know of it, actually, should I say, rather than being there, because it's not open to the public. You have to be either staying at one of the lodges in Pafuri, Makuleki, or walking, I suppose. Yeah. So it was hot though, and we found a good shady spot not far from the viewpoint, had lunch there. It's difficult to assess the mood that early on. It's still so fresh. I think there were a few comments but the group kind of knew each other well, so they could make jokes of it early on. So there was not too much tension, although we all knew we were hot and a bit bothered and settling in still, I think, at that stage. And then I went through to night 1 on the Limpopo after a steep descent. I think that day 1 caught everyone a bit by surprise. We knew it was going to be the hardest day, but I think it caught everyone by surprise a bit.
And I know from myself what it's like when you really are pushing hard physically within yourself. You're quite deep inside yourself mentally. You're not able to engage with your surrounds as easily, and then often the questions can be to your guide, hey, when are we getting there? Where exactly are we going? How far is it? Like, for real, I mean, so was there any of that? And if so, like, how did that feel? How did you take that?
Well, a little bit. But I think we kept them up to date pretty well. So, yeah, we split the group right at the end, which is something we very rarely do. But went 4 and 4 just to allow there were some people who perhaps it was just a tactic, to tell the truth, to help Kirsty just slow down, and because we walk quite quickly sometimes, I suppose, and get into a rhythm. And I think people really struggle to say, like, hey, stop, like, I don't want to go that fast. People do struggle to speak sometimes. But no, there wasn't wasn't really too many questions about that. Maybe came in a little bit later on, but just trying to gauge how far we were moving each day. And I think we estimated it better and better as the trip went on. Yeah, night one was fairly quiet. We went to bed early, not too many animals around. One of the best sights on Limpopo at Mangala, and then
Describe Mangala. What is it? What is the vista? What is it? Are you in the riverbed or up high with the view?
You're just off the edge of the Limpopo, so you're right on the river, but not on the riverbed. You can in the floodplain. Yeah, okay. In the corner you've got mountains right behind you, so you're quite well protected.
But looking down over the river.
Looking down, yeah, nice vista over the river. Yeah, and you often do get animals coming in there, but it was very quiet that night. We had hardly had anything. A few hyenas in the distance, but yeah, I didn't hear any animals moving through the water or anything like that, which we normally do actually.
How was everyone feeling in the morning when they woke up?
Yeah, everyone was chipper. I think everyone had a good sleep, and certainly Kirsty was ready to go, and she was my biggest concern at that stage, where we're going to have to make adjustments. To be honest, she had said she felt like she'd be the weakest link, but she, like, from then onwards physically was so much better, and we walked a really good pace that day. So yeah, I think everyone was getting into it now. We had done a water drop, so we started with a little less water, only 3 liters out the blocks, and then after about 7 k's we got some more water. Saw our first elephant that morning. Not a close encounter, but it was walking towards us on the same path, and we saw each other from a distance, and then it moved off. Then we filled up with water, and it was after that we crossed the tar road. For me, it was now new territory. I walked a small section into Pafuri River Camp, but not in these sections that around, all the way around towards the Fever Tree Forest and Nwambi, Pan, where we had lunch. But on the way there, we saw a small group of elephants, I think all bulls, that had been at a pan and then now were moving off. The wind was moving from our left to right, and they had moved across us as well. And we knew that if we walked that way, they would smell us, but to walk around the other way was too far. And as we went across, they picked up our wind, or they noticed us there. There was a giraffe that saw us as well, and maybe that triggered them. But anyway, they clearly detected us and started to run into the wind, and one of them ran pretty much directly at us, but didn't know we were under a tree at that stage watching them, and it was running right at us until we shouted and let it know we were there, and then it stopped, and yeah, it didn't get too close, 30-40 meters, and then continued, looked at us briefly, stood on one leg for a while, and then ran off. So it wasn't
pumping.
Yeah, it did. It was hard to read. The situation was hard to read initially, but yeah, Mark actually said it and said no, it hasn't seen us. But it ran around a bush and kind of came straight towards us. So maybe it was just following the scent, trying to find us, locate us, because that's often what animals want, to actually know where you are. And once it knew where we were, it's like, okay, and then it could make a decision and know it was moving away from us. So yeah, it was a bit tense, and I think got everyone going a little bit.
What was the reaction like from the group?
Like, whew, wow, like quite. Peter actually said it afterwards that it had been his favorite moment so far. So I think it was exciting, and it never got too tense. So yeah, that was the general reaction. Beautiful lunch spot in Nwambi Pan, but it was hot, and we didn't have extra water over lunch, so we had just had with what we had filled up with it, the water drop, but a beautiful spot there, and then a tough afternoon walk over a few hills to the Limpopo. Again, new territory, so you know where you're going, and you're reading the map off the GPS, but you don't know what exactly lies in front of you, which is always exciting. Yeah, and then found the most beautiful spots on the Limpopo to camp out at for night 2. Lots of good water, and I've been full moon In fact, that was full moon, wasn't it? Yeah.
Tuesday, Wednesday nights.
Yeah, that was full moon night too. So yeah, it was incredible to spend that on the Limpopo with the expanse of that sand, and then yeah, everyone getting into it by then. Nice flow. What else happened that evening? Oh, hyenas came out, actually ran all over the sand. We watched them in the binos just before we went to bed. Elephants crossed. A herd of buffalo came out, and of course with the moon you can see all their shadows. So they came out almost into the middle of the Limpopo, and then they detected us. All the animals in the Pafuri, when they detect you, especially at night, you know, they react. They move off. They don't like people, because people up there, I guess, often represent primary or top predators, and are after them.
It has a feeling of a much more, I want to say, primal way of coexisting with animals, like a much more how humans evolved alongside nature.
Yeah,
maybe,
because they definitely didn't. When you see some of the situations where you can just walk up to them and they know they're all chilled, it's not like that in the Pafuri. There are groupings that are more relaxed, but it's rarely like that. So you're paying a lot of attention to how easily detectable you are, and trying to detect them first, and noticing when they detect you and how they react. We did have some bulls that just stared at us from 150 meters, but you certainly got the feeling that you couldn't take a step, start walking closer towards them without reacting. So we went that way, they went that way. And we predicted that. We said, well, what can we do here? Let's just loop a little bit there, because they want to go there. As soon as you did that, they split. Then you see more. And they go that way, so then you got to go that way. And it's this dance, I suppose. So then we visited Crook's Corner, and the group had been reading the Ivory Trail, which is highly recommended reading for anyone, especially coming on Pafuri Traverse. And Vakenya and his adventures up there tells you all about the history of the Pafuri area, Pafuri Triangle. So visiting Crook's Corner, Fernandez Store, then on to Rietbakvlei, Fever Tree Forests. We actually then went back and camped at the same place. So we almost just did a tour of the most interesting sites of Pafuri on that day.
Was that intentional?
We didn't think that would happen, to be honest.
Okay, so you didn't leave your packs and anything and then walk out?
We carried everything all day. We knew we might come back there, but being the first one, we'd ended up camping a bit further from Crook's than anticipated. So in the morning we walked down the river, 3 kilometers to Crook's, then to Fernandez, which is about 1 kilometer back, and then to Rietbakvlei and the Fever Tree Forest, which is about 10 kilometers in all. Everything's about water when you're out there, so we had to then think, where's our next access to water, because we'd only done the 2 drops. We couldn't go further up the Limpopo because we wouldn't be able to get through the riparian zone. It's too thick in places, so you have to go certain distances to be able to access water in the Limpopo again. So that's why we returned to the site. Probably refine that moving forward. I think it's nice to stay in different places and experience different sites, and camp closer to Crook's Corner in the second one that we're doing in June. Although we heard monkeys went berserk while just the sunset came that evening, and the way they were calling and how it got more and more intense and then dissipated away. One could almost imagine this leopard just walking through the riparian zone behind us, and kind of follow it with the way the monkeys are calling. Must have been. Although we didn't see it spoor the next morning. Lots of hyena spoor though. And we carried on in this zone that's, the Limpopo is so wide, you got visibility and sand, so you don't always walk in the Limpopo because of the sand, it's hard. Then you've got thick riparian, and then that moves on to riparian into Mopani, baobab type grassland, rolling hills, often in a more hilly environment. So you try to walk these little transition zones, and it's exactly where you have to walk because the animals walk there as well. So you're just weaving in and out. And yeah, that morning I think was one of everyone's favorite, where we just followed this transition zone moving along the Limpopo all the way up to Mangeba. We got to our campsite by lunchtime and just spread out and relaxed. I think everyone needed a bit of time at that point just to gather and an afternoon of relaxation. And this is where one of the most surprising things happened. As we arrived, there were some fishermen from the Zimbabwean side that had been using a little pool to fish in, and they actually moved off, but then quickly came back. I'm not sure whether they were wary of us at that point or not. But then more and more people came to fish that afternoon, and gee, by the end there must have been 25 people, kind of all using nets and rods, not catching big fish at all in the nets, really like small stuff. And they got closer and closer, and then eventually we did engage and greeted one another, and typical kind of waving and hello, friendly engagement. And then a few of just Derek and Steve actually went and spoke to them and looked at their fish. And there was a group of probably about 16-year-old 4 girls who were just giggling the whole time. See you tomorrow, and they left. Like, they were using as much English as they had, and we didn't really speak much. I guess I'm not sure what it would be up there, or not sure. But they did give David words. He was washing his shirt, and the one lady asked him why he was doing the ladies' work, which was hilarious. So yeah, it was. We observed the way they lived, and they were also very curious about us. And it's not what you expect in a wilderness trail, but the people living there were living very connected to the land. And that was the theme about the trail as it came out, was living connected to nature. And those people lived connected to nature every day. And we learned so much from them sitting on the bank that day. Yeah, it was very interesting, just having an engagement, but at the same time just seeing how each other lived. And I didn't feel like we were staring on at them and looking at what they're doing and laughing and whatever. It wasn't like that. It was very much an engagement and
a two-sided interaction,
yeah,
a two-way interaction.
Yeah.
Not
And everyone actually really enjoyed that. You wouldn't think that you'd enjoy interacting with people on a trip like that, but we did in that way. So that's actually something we asked them. We said, why? Because they would go deep into. I saw them up to here in the pool.
Yeah.
And we certainly had decided not to swim in that pool. And then when you see them do that, we were like, well, then it's obviously safe. But then we saw croc tracks through the sand, fairly fresh crocodile tracks. Not a big croc, but big enough. And then that night when we shone the torch, there were eyes. So there's crocs there. And
when you asked them,
they laughed. No crocodile. They just didn't fear maybe. Or maybe the water's maybe not deep enough for the crocs to want to catch people. Or the crocs aren't big enough. Or perhaps every now and again someone does lose their life to a croc. They must. I mean, we know people lose their lives to crocs. But it wasn't a concern of theirs. Yeah, they just carried on fishing.
I'm sure Mark wasn't signing up to go for a dip.
No. And that was actually, was it that day? I think that was the anniversary of his crocodile.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was.
Oh, wow.
A year. Yeah, exactly a year. It was that day. Yeah.
Oh, that's quite momentous, actually.
Yeah, it was. We spoke about it a lot. It's not something we don't talk about. And then, we woke, good, reasonable night's sleep there for most of us. And headed off for the eco training camp, which was a welcome break, a bit of a surprise where we could grab a Coke and a real toilet and freshen up a bit.
Who was surprised, your trailers or the eco training people when you arrived?
Both, I think. Eco train, we had told them, but they were out at the time. There was a few students in camp, chatted to them, and it was nice to just get rid of your rubbish, throw that away, have a Coke, go and regather, and then head out again. We had lunch a kilometre, so it wasn't too long. We stopped there for about half an hour at most, and then headed out for our lunchtime break. Always lunch under a tree, somewhere beautiful, and it's a long stop, 2 or 3 hours. Lots of bit of sleep, bit of chatter, and observation, bird watching. Yeah, I think that's such a good time to contemplate and be out in the bush. It's always nice to see these places in different states, no matter what. So each time you walk it, it's going to be in a different state. And I do think that the end of winter is going to be a bit easier. Yeah, and then what? So that was night 4, and then night 4 was Mangala, and then we walked through the eco-training camp. Night 5, also on the Limpopo, close to Makwadzi Pan. Yeah, and then it's the final night. A lot of contemplation, and it's a bit bittersweet because you're ready to get out of the bush. At the end of the day, we live in more comfortable circumstances, and some of you always thinks about that and craves that. You think about the food you might eat if you had it, being tired of being a bit thirsty, and all of those things. So some of you is relieved to get out, but then of course it's the end of the amazing journey. So it's a bit sad as well. We got to pick up. We actually made a mistake there. We agreed on the pickup point and then walked past it, anticipating the vehicle to come from the other side, but they'd arranged eco-training to pick us up, and they were waiting on the spot. So we missed each other and ended up getting picked up an hour late, or later than anticipated. But it didn't matter. It was a lesson in itself, not to make too many assumptions. So yeah, that was fine. There was. The end was, I guess, not too dramatic at all. Some people, the end of a race is always so, da-da, medal, woohoo, but this was just the end. Yeah. You asked me who got the most, who enjoyed the trip the most the other day. And I think that would be an impossible question to answer, because everyone gets different things out of it. And it's a space that, I think, it's never the same twice, especially 5 nights when you're walking distance. It had a Kruger Trail feel about it. I'd never walked another trail that had such a similar feel to it, because we had to kind of make certain places, and we had a progression. Adding the Kenya story and the history, I think, added huge context for, especially Group of 4. I gave them the book just 2 days before, and they'd been reading it in Kruger as they traveled north. Yeah, the Ivory Trail, as they traveled north. So they were only halfway through it, but they had a whole lot of it in their head, and they'd have finished it off by now, I'm sure. So to read half, go and see it all, and then finish off his story must have been quite a cool way to do it. I haven't spoken to them about it yet. But I think that's for anyone wanting to do it, or who does it, to read the Ivory Trail before. Understand, and then when you're out there, you keep casting back to what it would have been like in 1900 or before to walk here. I mean, he was hunting elephant, but just to walk there and be there. Peter said it took him back to his early hiking days when he was a student, where you're exploring, and there's so much that's unknown as you go ahead. I think as you hike more, you know the areas. Well, this had a real adventure seeking, what's ahead, what's going to happen today. Walking in the bush in general has that feeling to it, but now being the first trip, it'll retain that for a while, because it's never the same. Only when we get to know this really well will it feel a little bit more normal to us as guides, I think.
I was going to say, even for guides, even when you've done it multiple times and really know your routes well, there's still that unexpected of you don't know what you're going to encounter. And as guests, even if your guides know it really well, for you it's a totally unknown adventure. You can picture it as much as you like, but until you're in it and actually feeling that rhythm of the day and the pack and living that really raw basic life, only then can you really start to imagine. And I think that's why those first few days take a bit of settling in, but then by day 3 you in the rhythm, because you know what to expect from the rhythm of the day. But the wonder of it is you don't know what you're going to see, encounter, where you're going to sleep that night.
But your group's working as a community by then as well, which you're around those people all the time, and the way you do things together a lot all add to the feeling out there and the way of life, which is kind of counter to the way the fast-paced life. It goes back, and we could see that in the Limpopo when we interacted with that community. And every morning we heard their drums on 3 occasions: the first night and the second night, and then the third morning. And they beat not a long session of drumming, and we surmised that perhaps it's like communications of sorts, what's happening, what to do, what the time is, maybe to also get people kind of start the day, end the day, but also if you could hear them from further and there's a certain beat, maybe it means something. We don't know. It woke us up and meant something to us. Living essentially a nomadic lifestyle of sorts, very connected to nature, from a water, a heat, a shade, everything perspective, comfort, thorns, and discomfort. It's also about it. I think it comes into it, the discomfort. You can't, without it, the trail wouldn't deliver the same message, or not even message, same learnings, same thoughts. It takes you into a space where you can see your own life and contemplate what it means from a very different angle and perspective. And you come back feeling so calm, like there's a deep calmness in one. It slowly goes back again because you can't hold on to it, unfortunately. And maybe that's what kind of real exposure to wilderness and basic historical ancient ways of life does for one. Nothing can shake you when you've gone and experienced that for 5 days. When you come back in here, just your whole life has got a different texture to it. And there's a lot more clarity to what's good, what's bad, what you should be doing, what you shouldn't be doing. Where perhaps you're making good decisions and not such good decisions, or thoughtless decisions. I think there's nowhere to hide out there. It all becomes very obvious very quickly.
And I think everything out there is very intentional. There's nothing, you do very little that is thoughtless.
Yeah.
And
let's just go wander over here for a while. No, if you're going to move, you move for a certain reason.
And you think about whether this is the right or the wrong place to go to. Do we sit and have lunch there or there?
To go this side of that bush or that side of that bush, that path, that path, that path. Especially when you lead the trail. I think when you're a trailist, you just move with the trail.
But you're also making decisions like, do we eat this now or save it? And those are they seems like such a small thing, but when you're out there and all you've got with you is this provisions that are in your pack, when you choose to eat that treat, makes a big difference. And I think it's so counter to how we live our daily lives.
I can just get another one.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, I'm uncomfortable, push the button.
Yes.
Put
the aircon on.
What am I going to do? Should we move? Should we find higher? Should we find wind? Have we got enough water? Should I just lie still?
A very mindful way of existing for that brief interlude.
Yeah.
That can give huge perspective.
And I think the fact that it's the most northeastern corner, Crook's Corner, Pafuri, there's something very magical about that space, those valleys, that adds a lot of context. So the place in which you do it can be important. And the Pafuri Traverse covers the Luvuvu and then the Limpopo. It's a landscape, that I dreamt a lot, and I think it's a landscape that's got a lot of that type of energy where your ancestors have been there, people have been doing stuff there, the evidence is there. I mean, we found a stone tool. Yeah, not that one, another one. We left it there.
Good.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So yeah, that was the first time. The second time will be different. They'll always be different. The people make it different, the vegetation makes it different, the place remains the same. But what you encounter and how it rolls out every single time is different. So yeah, it's a pretty cool thing to do, and I'm very excited for all those trips to come.
Sounds like it was a very special one.
It was, yeah, and there's 3 more this year, and then opportunities for next year as well. But yeah, it's certainly feeling very, I don't want to say privileged, because I don't like that word too much, because I think that everyone's work is meant to be, but very stoked with my work right now and where it's taken me and what I'm doing. Contented, yeah. I can do that again and again and again with a whole bunch of different people.
Awesome. I can't wait to
experience it yourself.
Myself, yeah.
You very much have earned it. I'll take you there one day, soon.
Awesome. I can't wait.